Harihi Om. Ganana tva ganapati gumhavamahe kavemu kavenamu vamashravastamam jyestharajam brahmanam brahmanaspatha anashunvarno devasedasadanam prano devi saraswati vaje birvajinivati Deenamamitrayavadho Ganeshaya Namaha Saraswatyai Namaha Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Jnananandamayo Devam Nirmalar Spatikhatruthim Adharam Sarva Vidyanam Ayagrivam Yasyadvarada Vakradhyaya Parishatya Parashatham Vignam Nignam Tisatatam Vishvashremam Tamashraye Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Gurave Sarvalokanam, Bisaje Bhavaroginaha. Nidaye Sarva Vidyanam Sri Dakshinamurthaye Namaha Harihi Om Tatsat Sri Saishwararpanamastu Prapanna Parijathaya Totra Vetraikapanaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Gita Mrutadudhe Namaha Sarvopanishat Ghao Dokha Gopalanadanaha Partho Vatsau Sudhir Bhokta Dugdha Gita Mrutat Mahat Vasute Vasutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagatgurum Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Krishnarpanamastu Shubhamastu Namo Namaha Suswagatam. Welcome to the 8th week, where we are venturing further into the conversation between Purusha and Manusha, Krishna and Arjuna, to let us know what is required for us to transcend this Jiva Samsara, right? So that at the end of the day, this Jivatma merges with the Paramatma. It's like a stage play. Shakespeare said the world is a stage and all upon it are but actors. Like that, each of us have a part to play. Similarly, in the war, everybody had a part to play in the great epic Mahabharata. And everybody's role represented something, a characteristic, a feature that actually represents life on earth. So when you examine everybody's character, right, the features of their character. So if you take Vidura, for example, who was the central minister in Dhritarashtra's administration, he is, despite his goodness and his fairness and his sense of justice and his unbiased approach to every issue, he still wasn't able to make a difference in Dhritarashtra's perception and complete biased approach towards his running of the country and running of his affairs, right? So that means, despite the goodness of a person, there will always be people around them, surrounded by people who are negative or people who have an opposite perception of yours. This Mahabharata is telling you, everyone all around Even in the midst of Krishna himself, God is the boss, right? So much of negativity. Yet, was Krishna disturbed or perturbed by any of this? No. So this is one of the main inner significance or lessons for us, right? What each person went through, the roles of each and every person in the entire epic, and how that affected one another, right? This is the inter and intra relationship in the epic or in the great Itihasa, Mahabharata. And as I said to you, many weeks, sometimes I repeat, I say to you, the battle of Kurukshetra happened then, about 8,000 years ago. However, that battle is still ongoing, ensuing every day in our daily lives, between right and wrong, positive and negative, good and bad, to do, not to do, to wear, not to wear, to say, not to say, to think, not to think, to do, not to do, all this complete. So what do we need to transcend this stage, right? So we have been analyzing the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna over the past 7 weeks. Today, we've successfully completed 2 parts of the entire Mahabharata as 3 parts, right? 18 chapters. First 6 chapters speaks of the Jivatma, right? The second 6 chapters speak about the Paramatma. And the last 6 chapters talk about Divya Jnana. Okay? Once you know who you are and once you know who your creator is, then you have to know how do I, from my stage, attain the creator stage or attain a merging with the creator. Divya Jnana. So we've looked at 12 chapters. Chapter 13 is called Kshetrakya Vibhava Yoga. There's 35 verses here. And this one is talking about the nature, the enjoyer, and the consciousness, And many times I've said in my talks, there are 3 levels of consciousness. Your conscious self, which equals the physical self. Then the subconscious self, which equals the mind. And then the superconscious, which equals the supreme. Right? So only when your conscious is in the right matter, is in the right level, has the right metal, then it can communicate, relate, and link up with the conscious, subconscious. And the conscious and the subconscious then will relate to the superconscious in that order, right? So, Kshetrakya Vibhaga Yoga basically is where Krishna is telling Arjuna or helping Arjuna to differentiate between the physical self and the soul. So the soul and the super soul, if you like, right? So the soul, the Jivatma, and the super soul, the Paramatma. So looking at consciousness as in the self against the universalness as in the supreme soul. And this is what this chapter is all about. And then we go to chapter 14, which is looking at the gunas, the 3 gunas, 3 gunaha, right? Rajas, tamas, and sattvic, right? So what I want to say first is there is an absolute sequence to the way in which Krishna has brilliantly delivered his, so-called divided these 18 chapters, right? 18 chapters is Vyasa, right? But his entire chat with Arjuna was one stage, then next stage, then next stage, then next stage, then next stage. It was not, a mixed concoction of here is the recipe, do what you want. No. First, you take something. Then you bring something else. Then you cut something else. Then you put something else. It one stage after another stage. So let me take you back to 11 and 12. 11, he gave Arjuna the divine vision. You want to know who I am, right? See, for that, I'm giving you the Divya Drishti, the Jnana Drishti. Now you've seen, right? And 12 was Bhakti Yoga. Now that you know who I am, who my true self is, I have revealed that to you, I am sure now you can work on your bhakti. So 13 is what happens when you work on your bhakti? The soul that you are, the Jivatma, right, will begin to relate to the Paramatma. Hence, Kshetrakya Vibhaga Yoga. Right? So anyway, Arjuna, right, the supreme questioner, right? If Krishna was the supreme Godhead of personality, then I would give Arjuna the title of the supreme questioner, right? He questions, and all his questions have only benefited us, to say the least, right? So the man deserves credit, due credit. So he asks questions. What is Kshetram? What is Kshetrajna? What is Jnanam? What is Jneyam? What is Purusha? What is Prakriti? What is Sadhanam? And what is Phalam? Superb questions, right? And Krishna says, okay, no problem. I will clear your doubts, right? Hence, this chapter is referred to as Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga, right? So, see, like I said earlier, right? The first 6 chapters, we spoke about Jivatma Padam. Then the second 6 chapters, we spoke about the Paramatma Padam, Ishvara Paramatma Padam, right? Jiva Tattvam in the first 6, Ishvara Tattvam in the second 6. In the third 6 is how you go from Jiva Tattvam, you realize Jiva Tattvam in order to attain Ishvara Tattvam, right? That is the last 6. So Arjuna says, oh, okay, fine, you've started to tell me what are these, 6 things, 6 topics. What is Kshetram? What is Kshetrajna? What is Jnanam? What is Jneyam? What is Purusha? And what is Prakriti? Krishna says, okay, they are more or less the same, but I will tell you what each one of them mean. He said, let me start with Kshetram. He said, Kshetram means place. Since I have shown you that the entire universe is contained within me, I am also Kshetram, and within me, everything that resides within me is also Kshetram. So the entire objective universe, Arjuna, is Kshetram. From the beginningless Prakriti, right? It's called Avyaktam. Everything experienced by you and me comes under this very, very concept of Kshetram. Right? Kshetram in a everyday language means the place where you live. Kshetram. But we are living, at a very base level. You say, I live in a house, on this road, on this street, in this town, in this city, in this country. Right? If you strip all of that, then you are surviving surrounded by nature. Nature is surrounded by universe. Universe is within the God. Therefore, everything, like I said earlier, the entire objective universe is your Kshetram. So where do you think God resides? Everywhere. Hence, the reference to omnipresence. You don't even we not only say omnipresence, we also say omniscient and omnipotent. Now, at this point, I like you to stop and think, okay, if I accept God as being omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient, do I have faith in that belief? So do I behave myself because I know God is everywhere, right? Just because you have a puja room in your house does not mean he is contained within that puja room when he is the universe. So he's everywhere, right? From the front of the house to the back of the house, to the top of the house, the bottom, out to the internal spaces of the house, including the toilets, right? So you have to realize the presence of divinity around you, above you, all around you. That's the starting point. He says, realize that the entire objective universe is the Kshetram. 2 things it includes: Mahat and Mahankara. Mahat is cosmic intellect and Mahankara is cosmic ego. In the same way, if you remove the cosmic and you bring man into the picture, the man has intellect, but the man has ego. So what happens is the intellect should actually suppress the ego. But because of his desire, because of his attachment, because of his unfailing attitude to live in the materialistic world, the ego takes over the intellect. But once you realize that the entire universe is actually enveloped by this Mahankara, cosmic ego, which can be subdued by the Mahat. So we say Mahatma, Mahatma, Mahatma. Mahat is cosmic intellect. So Krishna says, if you reduce this entire universe that is a Kshetram to your body, then your body is the Kshetram. That's why they say, Deho, your body, Deha, Deho Devalaya. Your body is the temple of God. And then what is the mind? And what is the heart? Right? The heart is the Garbhagraha, the sanctum sanctorium. What's the mind? The mind is the Gopura. Okay. And of course, the height of intellect is the Kalasha that you see on top of the Gopura. That is why whenever there is a, big consecration ceremony that happens to all the temples every 12 years, the most important part of it is the bathing of the Kalashas at the top, on the tip of the temple, because that represents cosmic intellect. It is through the energies that the energy is from there onto the Kalash, down into the sanctum sanctorium, and then it revolves around. Which is why when you go into the temple, you go around, because you are trying to absorb some of the divine energy. So nothing is done in vain, right? Especially if you look in the Hindu samskars and the Hindu sampradayas, nothing is done in vain, right? You need to question, why do they do this in the temple? Or why do they do that as part of this ritual? Or why do they do this and that and everything? Everything has a reason, right? You see, because if you say, earlier I said the body is the entire universe. Now I have brought it down to your body. Do you not think you are connected to the universe? You breathe air. Air is what? Vayu, part of the Panchabhutas, isn't it? Whatever you eat comes from nature. Well, it used to come from nature. Now it comes from genetically modified stuff, from completely different thing, but nature, right? All the Panchabhutas relevant to you. Your body operates at 3 different levels of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, right? Heat, air, and inertia. And then, of course, you have the Panchakoshas, right? Base level and the innermost level, right? Annamaya Kosha. Only when you control Annamaya Kosha can you elevate the status of your Kshetra to the next, which is Pranamaya Kosha. And when you graduate from Pranamaya Kosha, you go into Manonmaya Kosha. Then you go into Vijnanamaya Kosha. Vijnana Vibhaga Yoga, I have done that a few chapters ago, right? Finally, when you can tap into the Vijnanam, or the science of spirituality, or the science of spiritual energy, then you go into Anandamaya Kosha. So you see, everything is connected to the Kshetra. Krishna was explaining this to Arjuna, right? So it's not a new concept. It came up in the 19th century or the 18th century or perhaps the 20th century. It's been there. It's been there, lying latent. And then some people went and made it patent, but no one yet has made it potent, right? What lies patent, what lies latent within you can be made potent, but it can only be made potent once you make it patent. Latent to patent, patent to potent. That is the way. Krishna says, okay, do you understand now? Arjuna says, yeah, okay. Kshetram, I know. What is Kshetrajna? Kshetrajna is the conscious principles that illumines the Kshetram. You see, let me explain this to you in a simple way, right? If you take a bulb, a light bulb, a brand new one that works, of course, you've tested it, it works in the shop, you brought it back. The bulb, has the power to light up, correct? But just holding that bulb in your hand, does it light up? No. It needs to be connected to something where electricity will conduct itself. And once you switch the electricity on, boom. Kshetrajna is that electric energy, that conductor that makes the bulb shine, right? Kshetrajna is Brahmapadam. Kshetram is Jivapadam. Therefore, the Jivatma is Kshetra. Kshetrajna is the Paramatma. He is the very consciousness in all the bodies, all-pervading consciousness, right? What you call as Jiva is Kshetram. What you call as Paramatma is Kshetrajna, right? Therefore, I'm telling you the connection between Kshetram and Kshetrajna, the connection between Jivatma and Paramatma. One has to go towards the other, right? So let me come back to the temples. Many of you would have gone to many temples in your lifetime. Do you know why all the Vahanas are always facing the sanctum sanctorium? So if you go to a Ganesh temple, you will see the Mushika is facing the sanctum sanctorium. The god is facing outward, but the Mushika is facing the Lord. If you go to a Narayana temple, you will see Garuda is always facing the Lord, right? If you go to a Durga temple, you'll see Simha facing. If you go to a Shiva temple, you see Reshape, the bull, facing. Like that, if you go to any temple, you will see the Vahana is facing, because the Vahana represents Jivatma. Vahana, the carrier. And one that is in the sanctum sanctorium represents the Paramatma. So the Jiva should always be looking and yearning for the Paramatma's grace, right? That is why the relationship is like that. And that is why the temples are constructed in a way to give these little messages, And also if you go sometimes, and many people don't know this, right? There's a little round thing that is right behind the Vahana. So let's take, if you take Lord Shiva's temples, right? Shiva's temple, if you go, or if you go to a Lord Subramanya temple, there is Mayura or Mail, right? Right behind whichever Vahana, the temple, whichever temple you go, there is a little circular thing that is sitting there. That is called Bali Pridam, right? It is called a sacrificial altar. So before the Jiva seeks the grace, the Anugraha of the Paramatma, before the Jivatma seeks the grace of the Paramatma, it has to give something it has to put something on the sacrificial altar. So what do you think you have to sacrifice before you can go to the Lord and say, here I am? Sacrifice all your quality. So even when you see them doing the pujas and the aradhanas, the puja sanskars, you will see the priests, sometimes they put a bit of white cooked rice, sometimes they put flour, and then they remove that, right? So both, whether it's flour or something natural, so something that is naturally within you has to be sacrificed, that is not good for your spiritual journey. So all negative thoughts, negative words, negative actions. That's what you have to do before you actually go forward. Right beside the Jivatma, looking at the Paramatma. Right? As one of Lord Shiva's name is Pashupati. And Pashu is the Reshape, the cow, the bull, whatever you want to call it. Pashupati, right? Jivatma, Paramatma. So that is Kshetram and Kshetraknyam, right? Then he goes, what is Jnanam? Remember 6 things he asked, right? 6 things, Arjuna. Kshetram, Kshetraknyam, Jnanam, Nyayam, Purusha, Prakriti. Okay. So Krishna says, Jnanam. You want to know what is Jnanam? The Arjuna says, yeah, can anybody be fit to receive Jnanam? Krishna says, actually, Arjuna, in order for you to be able to receive the knowledge that is awaiting you, you have to prepare yourself for that. What do you mean, prepare myself? There are 20 prerequisites before someone becomes ready for knowledge or wisdom, jnana. Arjuna is intrigued now. He says, oh my God, what are they? Krishna is telling him one by one, right? 20. Krishna is saying, first thing you need is humility. Why humility? Then only you'll have simplicity. Why simplicity? Then only you can develop non-violence. Non-violence in your thoughts, non-violence in your words, non-violence actions. Okay, that is 3, right? Humility, simplicity, non-violence. What about the others? Yeah, okay. Forbearance, honesty, and Guru Seva, service to the teacher. Guru Seva. Doesn't matter, right? I'm not talking about a Gurukula where the Shishya serves the Acharya, right? That is a separate service, right? If you are in that position, then you have to do service. But I'm talking about service to the teacher. Anyone who is in the position of telling you something which enriches your knowledge and your life is your teacher. Serve them. That means Matru Deva Bhava, Pitru Deva Bhava, Acharya Deva Bhava, Aditi Deva Bhava. All these people need to be served. In fact, I was looking at the thought of the day today, and it's fantastic because that's what he talks about. Swami's message today, if you look at the thought for the day, is that he says this 4 people have to be respected. And this Krishna, exactly what he said to Arjuna. right? Service to all your teachers. What does that service do? It engenders purity. What does purity do? It gives you steadfastness. What does steadfastness do? It gives you self-control. What does self-control do? It gives you detachment from objects of desire. And what will that do? Well, that will create an absence of egoism. Then what? Then you are constantly aware of the miseries surrounding birth and death. What then? Then you develop dispassion. What happens when I develop dispassion? That then leads to non-attachment or non-identification with everything else. And Shankara covered this, I think in verse 8. Kate kanta kaste putraha kudaha yahataha. He said, who's your wife? Who's your son? Where have you come from? Just think about this. I did Bhagavad Gita, I covered this. Same thing Krishna is telling. Constant awareness of the miseries of birth and death. What happens when I'm constantly aware there? Then, you see, it's a fantastic conversation between Arjuna and Krishna, because Arjuna tries to ask question after question after question to see whether Krishna will give up at some point and then say, there is no hope for you, Arjuna, get lost. You are not fit to do battle. But you see Krishna, always one step ahead, right? Whatever question Arjuna asks, Krishna gives that. So what if I develop non-identification, non-attachment? What will that do for me? Everything Krishna says, Arjuna has a counter. Well, if you develop non-identification or non-attachment, then you become equanimous. I said to you about samadrishti in chapter 12 and chapter 11. That's what you will start to develop. Okay, so what happens when I develop that? You don't mistake Arjuna for being arrogant or for being disrespectful, right? This is the nature of the relationship between Krishna and Arjuna. And I am telling you, right? And I'm telling you, and this is on record, you too can have that relationship with God. That banter without limitations. Because you put God so high up a mountain somewhere, and all our gods are living in mountains, right? Bring them down to earth and bring them within you. Then you can say, hey, Krishna, what's happening, man? Come on. Why this, why that, why this? Talk to them like that. And they will respond, right? You put them up in a hill somewhere and you fast for 13 days and then go and pray for 2 minutes and come back. Even in that 2 minutes, you do all that when in front of that God for 2 minutes, you can't concentrate. You are thinking, I should go before the crowd builds up. Or before the prasadam finishes, I have to go and grab that. So, this is what Krishna is saying. Be always equanimous in your thoughts. Samadrishti, equanimity in thoughts and sight. So, what happens when I become, when I have this equanimity, when I have this, samadrishti? That's when unswerving devotion to Lord takes place. Okay, then what? Then you go into seclusion. What happens when I go into seclusion? Then you go into non-indulgence. Non-indulgence in who? In what? In people's company, in people's affairs, in people's materialistic belongings. What a nice house that man has. That is indulgence in another person's, what a nice car that man drives. I wish I had. That is this is what Krishna is saying. Total seclusion you must have. How that can happen? Non-indulgence. So what will happen if I have non-indulgence? Then you're always in a state of constant self-inquiry. And what happens when I'm in the state of constant self-inquiry? Then you are never losing sight of the fruit of self-knowledge. That is jnana. How fantastic is that? Starting somewhere, build, the crescendo, the tip of the light, jnana. So I'm going to tell you the 20 again, slowly. Don't ask me during question time because I won't repeat this. Okay? Humility, simplicity, non-violence, forbearance, honesty, 5. Service to the teacher, purity, steadfastness, self-control, detachment, 10. Absence from egoism, constant awareness of the misery of birth and death. Dispassion, non-identification or non-attachment, right? And equanimity, 15. Okay, then unswerving devotion, seclusion, non-indulgence in people's company, in people's affairs, in people's belongings, constant self-inquiry, and not losing sight of the fruit of self-knowledge. How beautifully, in just giving 20 prerequisites, he has prepared Arjuna for the fruit of self-knowledge, right? And indeed, after the war and all, Arjuna actually goes away to meditate. And of course, Arjuna is actually the energy of Lord Indra. He merges with Indra. Once it doesn't matter if you say, but I'm only human. Yes, this is being given to you as a human being. Wasn't Arjuna a human being? Did not Krishna come as a human being? Was he not born? Born of, born to? So then Arjuna says, okay, now I'm clear about jnanam. What is jnayam? See, jnanam is the knowledge. So if I get this knowledge, what is the jnayam? Jnayam is the object of knowledge. Arjuna, my God, fantastic thought process he has, So Krishna, the next verse, 6 verses, right? 35 verses, right? So this, I think, is midway, 15, 16, something like that. Where Krishna talks about the truth which is to be known by acquiring the knowledge. He said, the knowledge will tell you the distinction between Sat, truth, and Asat. As we recite the Brihadaranya Upanishad, Asat Thoma Satgamaya, Asat Thoma Satgamaya, Tamas Thoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrithyurma Mridam Gamaya. The knowledge, the self-knowledge will give you this. It will tell you the all-pervading subtle and the far-off energy, the near and the far. Far for the ignorant, near for the wise. Choose whether you want to keep that knowledge far by constantly saying, but I don't have time. I'm totally involved in this. I need to keep aside plenty of time. I need to read a lot. I need to gain all this knowledge before I get. That means you're putting it far and far, far away. It's for the wise, it's near. It's for the ignorant, it is far. Krishna's words, right? Because the light of consciousness, is in everybody. It's in everybody's heart, right? Being subtle, it cannot be known as its pure form. Yet it shines in the body as Sat Chit Ananda, awareness, existence. Then why do you worry? You look at some people, you look at their face, some gurus, you can see, my God, the face is full of tejas, it's brilliance, effulgence, it shines. That is the light of consciousness that is burning inside everybody. Remember, I said it is in you, it is latent. First make it patent, then realize that you can make it potent. Latent to patent, patent to potent. Right? Otherwise, your spirituality becomes impotent when you can make it important. Okay, right. See, this method of realizing the awareness existence by distinguishing the soul as the super soul, there's no difference, is called Adhyarupa Apavada Prakriya. Adhyarupa Apavada Prakriya. Right? The method of superimposition and negation of that which is clouded by Maya. Right? So Krishna, having spoken about this, he says knowledge. Very easy. Do I have to read a lot? No. Do I have to pray a lot? No. Do I have to serve a lot? No. Then what do I have to do? Recognize that I am everything and dedicate everything in your thoughts, in your words, in your actions to me. Don't claim the fruits of your action. Now, how much more easier can it be, you tell me? How much more easier can your spiritual journey be made? This is Krishna telling Arjuna. He gives you the 4 yogas, right? Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Raja Yoga, knowledge. Then he says, even if you don't do all of this, it's okay. Everything you do in your thoughts, in your words, in your actions, realize it is me and dedicate everything. Sarvam Krishnarpanam, Sarvam Sai Arpanam, Sarvam Subramanyarpanam, Sarvam Ganesharpanam. Whoever it is, doesn't matter. They are all, a means to the end. You focus on the means, you'll not get the end. Focus on the end, you'll use any means. Choice is yours. Are you wise or are you being continuing to be ignorant? Now Arjuna is clear. He was clear about Purusha, he was clear about Kshetram, Kshetrajnam, Nyayam, Nyayam. Now he's asking, okay, what about the other two? Purusha and Prakriti. Right? Again, Krishna says, the Purusha as the body is the Karta and the Bhokta, whereas the Prakriti is the Supreme, is the Paramatma. It's the Absolute, ever unaffected, ever the same. Unlike the body which goes through changes, and of course the changes in the body can be directly related to the mind can be related to everything that happens around it, outside of it. So whatever happens outside actually affects the mind within. Can you imagine if you control the mind, your mind is controlled within, then anything that happens externally cannot disturb you. He says, realize that I am the Purusha and then merge me with the Prakriti. That means you're merging with the external, becoming one. Right? Do not distinguish yourself as distinct from me. Understand that you and I are one. You are part of me. Remember I said to you, if you light a match, right? And there's a candle burning. So the lit match, if you go and put it in the flame of the candle, the light that is burning on the candle, can you distinguish which is the light that is coming from the matchstick and which is the light that was already there in the candle? You can't. This is exactly what Purusha and Prakriti means. But unless you say, I'm holding the matchstick, I'm holding the matchstick, I'm holding the matchstick, you will never see that the light is merged already. So he's saying, realize that I am Purusha and I am Prakriti, and you as Kshetra, you are part of the Kshetrajna. When you get that jnanam, you will know the object of that knowledge, which is the jnana. So to gain this knowledge, right? And Krishna is telling, to gain this knowledge, one has to go through Karma Yoga. Get enough knowledge through Sankhya Yoga, self-inquiry. In order to develop your self-knowledge, you have to go through Bhakti Yoga and Dhyana Yoga. So they are all pathways for you to reach the pinnacle of spiritual knowledge. So basically, he's telling Arjuna, everybody in this world can choose whether they want to fall into the ignorant category and be at a distance from God, or they can choose to be in the wise category and become nearer to God, That's why I said the final 6 chapters give you the wisdom or Divya Jnana, the transcendental wisdom, which obviously helps you to become detached from materialistic aspirations and simultaneously become detached from materialism, attached to the Supreme Godhead. Right? So the acronym, because I'm talking about wise people, the acronym for chapter 13 is WISE, W-I-S-E, wise. Right? What is W? What does Arjuna do? He asks wise questions. So wise. First W is wise questions, because Krishna has answered all of Arjuna's questions. And the questions are always full of intellectual wisdom, right? Full of inquiry, right? Full of methodology, or seeking a methodology from Krishna. Then what is I? I is items of knowledge. As a result of those wise questions, now he's getting little, packets of knowledge which he can package together and I have one package now. So wise questions that lead to items of knowledge, W-I-S, soul and super soul. So wise questions that lead to items of knowledge, which will then make you realize the difference between the soul and the super soul, or make you understand that there is no difference between the soul and the super soul, because then you come to the E, you will know who is the true enjoyer of everything. When you taste something, you will say it is good, it is bad, it is sweet, it is sour, it is, this or that. You are able to do that because the moment your tongue tastes it, that is one of your, panchakriyas, your senses. That goes to the brain, and the brain obviously, processes this detail and gives you information. And you then realize, okay, it is sweet, it is sour, it is salty, it is this, it is that. What is that? That is the super soul. So who is the enjoyer? It is the super soul that enjoys and tells you, I like that, that was really sweet. Then you respond, this is really nice, can you make it again? Okay. So WISE, let's look at that. What is W? All the wise questions. Remember Arjuna was asking, all the 6 things. Anybody, you can remember what those 6 things are? Prakritim purusham chaiva kshetram kshetrajna eva cha etat veditum ichchami jnanam jneyam cha Keshava. Keshava, Krishna, I wish to understand these 6 things: Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Jnana, and Jneya. And then, of course, Arjuna just asked the questions, and Krishna, of course, said, Prakriti is nature, Purusha is the enjoyer, Kshetram is the field of activities, which is your body, and Kshetrajna is the knower of that field, consciousness. Jnayam is the knowledge and the process of gaining that, and Jneyam is the object of the knowledge, to simply put it, right? So, very simply put, chapter 13 tells you how to distinguish these 6. Once you can, understand the philosophy behind it, then you are somewhere else. Items of knowledge. So here, Krishna distinguishes between worldly knowledge, right? It is Bhuloka Vidya, and self-knowledge, which is Atma Vidya. He says knowledge is not about information, is not about memorization, Arjuna. He said, but rather it is the knowledge that will make you an exemplar in terms of your personal character and your practicality and your behavior. It is conduct. Arjuna, knowledge is not merely having a qualification in some field. It is qualifying to be seen as a balanced human being. It is more caliber in your character than having academic qualifications, right? That's the character you need for spirituality. So all this thing that you know, right, is not enough. You need to develop, using this knowledge, you need to develop yourself as a person so that you develop the character, develop the character. So one who natures a saintly disposition sometimes experiences a change of heart. Of course, because you're moving from one stage of existence and one stage of knowledge and one level of practical thinking to another level of being, knowing, and practicalization. So definitely what will happen is there is some connection between what is in the heart and what is in the mind and what is physically happening, right? So you get disentangled, and you slowly become deep-rooted to the identification of the super soul in your soul. And that's when you say, Aham Brahmasmi, Tat Tvam Asi, right? Prajnanam Brahma. These are the 4. All the Vedas can be shortened to 4 verses. Rig Veda has 4 verses. Yajur, Sama, Atharvana, each can be done in 4 lines. 4 lines. That 4 lines can each further be sentenced in 1 sentence. And those are they, right? Aham Brahmasmi, Tat Tvam Asi, Prajnanam Brahma. I am Atman Brahma. 4, right? So this is what he's saying. Bookish knowledge, no. It is knowledge that because you are that knowledge and you are practicalizing that knowledge, you become knowledge for someone else to change themselves. That is what I'm looking for. That is true knowledge, right? So all this that I've told you, Kshetram, Kshetrajna, Jnanam, Jneyam, Purusha, Prakriti, all that is not for you to become more intelligent and such a clever person, right? It is for you to become a more spiritual person, right? These are the things that you require to know in order to purify your heart. It's not to become more clever and, goes down to how many gongs you hold, qualifications. Although, Arjuna, you need to understand this is the S now. W-I-S, soul and super soul. Jneyam yattat pravakshyami yajñātmāmritam mashnuthe anādimat param brahma nāsattannāsaduchyate. you need to know is what I'm going to reveal to you. And by knowing that, one attains immortality. Anadimat param, right? You will not be alone. This is the beginningless Brahman. It is always subsisted. But our vision is clouded by limitations. The first thing you want to get self-knowledge is to remove those limitations. Right? The purpose of knowledge, again, to understand that there is no difference between the soul and the super soul, right? You have to understand that, the purpose of knowledge is to realize that there is no distinction between the two, right? One who can be the individual, but at the same time, you can connect with the Paramatma through self-knowledge. But self-knowledge will only come when you have done all the yogas to some point, right? What if I can't do any of the yogas, right? Okay, then I've already given you the pathway. Everything you think, say, and do, dedicate it to me, and do not, at any point in time, claim any credit for it. There you go. Do I have to do Jnana Yoga? No. Do I have to do Dhyana Yoga? No. Do I have to do Karma Yoga? No. Do I have to do Bhakti Yoga? No. Simple way. This is the fifth way. It's called Atma Yoga. Finish. How you purify your Atma? Everything I think, Sarvam Krishna Arpanam. Everything I say, Sarvam Krishna Arpanam. That means you cannot think anything negative, right thinking. You cannot say anything wrong, right speech. And you cannot do anything wrong, right conduct. Finish. That is Atma Yoga. What some more you want? Do not analyze the pathway. The pathway is very simple, right? All these complications has become so because of different academic approach, different analysis of people, claiming to decipher the Bhagavad Gita and the Ramayana and all this, right? Making such easy things so difficult, beyond reach. No, well within your reach, right? Yeah, this is God to man is telling well within the reach, and then man comes and complicates it. Right? And I said to you about the enjoyer, isn't it? Right? Kshetra kshetrajna yorevam antaram jnana chakshusha Budha prakriti moksham chaye vidukyanti te bharam. Those who perceive with the eyes of knowledge instantly recognize the difference between the body and the knower of the body, the process that releases them from material bondage and attain supreme destination, because they know the true enjoyer of everything that I think I am enjoying is him. Because remember, you're already not distinguishing between the soul and the super soul, because you've already got the knowledge, because you ask intelligent, wise questions. So that is chapter 13, WISE. Let's go to chapter 14. Chapter 14 is important because it talks to you about the three gunas, right? That's why it's called Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga. Gunatraya, three types of yoga or gunas. Vibhaga Yoga. So the yoga of learning about the three gunas and becoming master of those three gunas, right? So here, Krishna is telling Arjuna about the three gunas and their respective characteristics. So it's very important that you listen to the characteristics, right? So maybe some of you would be able to identify. And indeed, I say you should identify yourself so you can transcend from one level to another level. Unless you identify, the first thing to getting knowledge is to accept that one is, sorry, I'm ignorant. I accept that. That is the first step of opening yourself to knowledge, right? Like that, you have to identify when I'm talking about these three gunas, some things apply to you, because then you can know how do I, reduce this and build on that. How do I develop those things, right? So he's saying how these three gunas affect individuals and what is the knowledge. You see here, he's telling what is the knowledge to transcend these three gunas. So must I get from one guna to the other and then the other guna to the other guna? He says, no. I will say this at the end again. He says, no. You have to kill all three gunas and become, gunatitaha. Gunatitaha. Remember one of my speeches on Guru Purnima, I said, Gu stands for gunatitaha and Ru stands for rupavarjitaha. One who's beyond forms and beyond attributes. That's what you need to become. So being sattvic is not enough? No. You have to conquer that sattvic nature, because then you're being attached to that sattvic nature, isn't it? Total non-attachment is what? I'm gunatita. I'm beyond the gunas. So it's, again, it's a fantastic chapter, this one, right? So because it talks about the gunas and the analysis of their characteristics. And then, of course, it talks about the knowledge of what you need to transcend from one stage of knowledge to another stage of knowledge, right? And that's why it's called Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga. Okay. So it talks about the Gunatita Lakshanam and the sadhana that you need in order to become Gunatita. Guna is, of course, attributes. Tita means one who has conquered gunas. Okay. So here, you see how I told you it's a step, one steps build onto it. So sequential, extremely sequential, right? So now he's telling you, you've seen my form, right? And then you know how to develop your devotion to me because you've seen what I am, who I am, and everything that I am is all that you know and all that you see and all that you can behold before your very eyes. Then chapter 13, he's giving you the self-knowledge. And then he's telling you how to use that self-knowledge to overcome these three gunas. I mean, it's a scientific modus operandi. Fantastic, you know. I mean, the more I read, the more I am fascinated about the intelligence that is behind this superb work, which some people say, it is only a story. Okay. You are at a distance. And I've said very clearly, chapter 13, Krishna says, you can choose to be ignorant, keep God very far away from you. And you can choose to be wise and realize that he's actually within you and there's no difference between the soul and the super soul. How easy is that? You don't have to do any of the 4 yogas. You see how easy the journey is made for you, right? He gives you the 4 yoga, the 4 pathways. Jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, karma yoga, and bhakti yoga. He gives you the 4 pathways. Then he says, if you cannot do any one of these, don't worry. Just in your thoughts, in your words, in your actions, dedicate everything to me. So why don't we just do that? But you see how beautifully Swami has created an organization and he's put all these things there, right? Within the spiritual wing, you get bhakti and dhyana. Within the service wing, you get service. Within the SSC wing, you get knowledge. I mean, building, blossoming of human excellence. What more you want to ask? Everything has been done for you. You only have to make that journey. That one no one else can do, my friends. No one else can do your journey, no matter how close you are to them. Whether they are your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your husband, your wife, you have a journey to do. You have to do it. No one else can. Right? You know, so, I mean, you know, when I went to Kailash, my wife, until today, she has this lament that I never make the journey with her. Right? Obviously, she was like 3 hours behind me. I mean, we completed the journey, right? She always says until today, you never walked with me, you never made the journey with me. And I always tell her, we have separate journeys to make, right? So you have to do your own journey, I have to do my own journey. Of course, she had her own experience in her journey and I had mine, right? So this is the point I'm making. It doesn't matter. That is self-knowledge. That is self-realization, right? So your birth and your death, that is confirmed. In between, everything is transient and temporary. You have to realize that. Okay? Doesn't matter who, what, where, when, why, how. Doesn't matter. Birth and death is confirmed. In between, everything else is transient. Temporary. Temporary. Anitya. What you want? You want nitya, permanence. Why do you focus then on the impermanence? Right? So here, what Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna, 3 verses, 3 things. He says, this, you know, he's talking about the 3 gunas. He says, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. They are born of Prakriti and they are responsible. Prakriti is, of course, nature, and they are actually responsible for human bondage. Nothing else but Prakriti. So he then analyzes it in order to tell Arjuna, right? He says, the body has 3 gunas, right? But you must understand that that is not the doer, right? Because people who identify themselves with the body alone will be subjecting themselves to the entrapment that comes with that sort of identification. That means you are saying, oh, I'm Rajasic, I'm Sattvic, I'm Tamasic, right? So the only way, the only solution, Krishna is telling Arjuna, only solution is to discriminate and own up the Gunatita Purusha as oneself. Saying, I have the capacity, I have the capability, and indeed I can inculcate the knowledge to transcend these three gunas. And that way you are no longer trapping yourself to the trappings of each of the characteristics of the guna. Sattvic is like this, Rajasic is like this, Tamasic is like this. So you say, oh, sometimes I'm Sattvic, sometimes I'm Rajasic, sometimes I'm Tamasic. Right? That is true liberation. When you realize that you have the capacity, capability, ability, and the knowledge to transcend. So you can become Gunatitaha. If a guru is Gunatitaha and Rupa Varjita, of course, his Shishya can also do the same thing. Right? How many places or instances where we have read, where there is a record of students surpassing their teachers? Exactly. Krishna is telling Arjuna, I know where I have come from. You don't know. But what I am telling you will make you know where you have come from. And once you know that, you and I are same. There is no difference. Right? So Swami always says, isn't it? I know I am God. Right? You are also God. The problem is you don't know that. So Arjuna asks, again, you see, the supreme questioner is asking the supreme Godhead, what are the characteristics of this Gunatita? And what is the sadhana you need to achieve this? Wow, fantastic, man. So, Arjuna, you've asked me two questions. First, you asked me, what is the characteristics of a Gunatita, one who can transcend the gunas? And second, you're asking me, what is the sadhana you need to do to achieve this? Okay, two things you've asked, right? Let me take one at a time. So he says, firstly, a Gunatita is one who is detached from Prakriti. He does not have the I notion. The I-ness and the minus is not the I notion and the my notion. He is not in there at all. Then he can transcend from Rajasic to Tamasic, Tamasic to Sattvic, from Sattvic to Gunatita. So four, if you like. Right? Rajasic, Tamasic, Sattvic, Gunatita. Four. So now Arjuna is interested. Oh my God. So a Gunatita is one who is above the three gunas. Yes, not just above the three gunas. He does not seek anything for himself. He does not seek anything for himself. Means, of course, you need some food to eat. You need, some clothes to wear. And you need somewhere to sleep. He doesn't have this notion of, I must have a sumptuous breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I must wear the finest clothes, and I must live in the best of palaces. Ceiling on desires, ceiling on desires. Swami says, cut everything down. And I said to you when during Bhaja Govindam time, right? It's okay to have desires. Don't get attached to them. The moment you stop getting attached to desires, your desires will become less and less and less and less. So you need desire to make yourself desireless. Even becoming desireless is the desire. Okay. So you see, Gunatita is invariably a wise man. Right? This is called Sthita Prajna. Right? If you go back to the second chapter, right, where Arjuna is, in a state of despondency, and Krishna is trying to, insert some wise thinking into him, right? And then, of course, in the 12th chapter, what we looked at last week, this is called as Parabhakta. Parabhakta, a bhakta, once he transcends the three gunas and you become Gunatita, that means you are, the next stage is attaining God. You're Parabhakta. Parabhakta you can become once you're a Mahabhakta. Mahabhakta you can become once you're a true sadhaka. Sadhakeshvaraha, Mahabhaktaha, Parabhaktaha, Paramatma Bhaktaha. You've merged with one. Okay. So then he says, very simple. You need that bhakti as the sadhana to achieve this goal. So now I've answered your two questions, right? You asked me what is the quality you need to transcend and what is the sadhana. I told you. Now, how can you get this? Guru. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. We have a guru that has come and told us all this. Right? You can have a guru through whom you can become a Gunatita. Right? So, few things. There are 5 things that you need to connect to each of the 3 gunas. Right? Listen to this, very important. Okay. There are 5 things about yourself, a human being, that will tell you whether you are belonging or falling into the category of Sattvic, Rajasic, or Tamasic. I'm going to give you the 5 things, and then I'm going to talk about each one of that to see what happens if you're Rajasic and that is your characteristic. What happens if you're Tamasic and that is your characteristic? What happens if you're Sattvic and that is your characteristic? Or how you can find out, right? The first thing is your Lakshana. Lakshana means your features or your characteristic, right? How do I know which one do I fall in? From my features, from my persona, that's the one. From your fascia, okay? So if you are tamas, then you are someone who, from your descriptor, you are someone who is mohanatmakam. Mohanatmakam means you're always into attachment, right? Or if you are rajasic, then you're called ragatmakam, which is delusion. If you're sattvic, then it's called prakashatmakam. Prakashatmakam means effulgence. So like I said earlier, some people you see, shiny face and, so you feel so light-hearted when you're with them, easy to talk to, they give you so much of knowledge. When you see that Lakshana is telling you basically they are falling into the sattvic category, right? Those who are completely caught by delusion, they are in the rajasic category, that's called ragatmakam. And those, of course, who are involved in attachment and it's very difficult to be non-attached, they are tamasic because they are in mohanatmakam. Okay. The next thing is something called the mode of how you are bound as that person. Now, I've told you what the personality relates to. Now, let me tell you that personality, how does it relate in terms of binding, right? It is called bandhana prakara. Bandhana prakara, one that is bind, or the mode of binding nature. So, if you are sattvic, how are you bound? It's called jnana sangha. That means you are attached to knowledge. So you fall into the sattvic. That is how it binds you. If you're rajasic, if your lakshana is prakasatmakam, then you are bound by jnana sangha. If you fall into the category of rajasic, then you're called karma sangha. That means you are attached to activity. Jnana sangha attached to knowledge. Karma sangha attached to activity. But tamasic, you are attached to pramada sangha. Pramada sangha is attached to indifference. No, this is not, that is okay, this okay, that is okay, that sort of thing. Then what is the sign of predominance in the personality that I've just spoken about? This is the third thing, right? It's called lingam. Sign of predominance. So if you are sattvic, then your sign of predominance is intelligence or knowledge, right? Oh, that person, my God, he knows a lot. So much he can talk about that. That is jnana vriddhi. Jnana vriddhi. That means your lakshanam, your characteristic is that you are bound by jnana sangha, and your sign of predominance is that knowledge, and increasing that knowledge. Of course, anything that you have that you don't give will never grow. Whatever it is, whether it's money, whether it's food, whether it's knowledge, the more you give, the more you grow, right? Very simple, right? So that is sattvic. Sign of predominance, jnana vriddhi. Rajasic, sign of predominance, karma vriddhi. That means increase in activity, And of course, tamasic, it is pramada vriddhi. That means increase of indifference. Remember, attachment to indifference, then sign of predominance, increase of that indifference. Then what happens when that time of death comes? Gati. This is called gati. For people in the sattvic category, it's called urdhva gati. If you do Shiva Upasana, one of the names that come is Urdhva Yanamaha, Urdhva Linga Yanama. Urdhva means higher lokas, higher realization, higher plane of existence, higher plane of consciousness, right? Urdhva. Urdhva Gati, sattvic. If you're rajasic, Madhyama Gati. Madhyama Gati means you can, go up and down. Bhulokas, Bhuloka, 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 Suvaloka, right? So you are able to transcend between Bhuloka and Bhuloka. But you cannot go to Suvaloka because you don't have the Urtva Gati. You don't have the Urtva Gati because you don't have the Jnana Vriddhi. You don't have the Jnana Vriddhi because you don't have the Jnana Sangha. You don't have the Jnana Sangha because you don't have the Prakasha, that effulgence. Okay. And of course, if you are tamasic, then it is a very simple thing. And sometimes you hear people saying adogati, athogati. So why you are like that? You are adogati, That means lower lokas. Just like we have the 7 lokas above, Bhuloka, Bhugaloka, Subaloka, Mahaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Hum Satyam, 7. Right? Bhu, Bhuva, Suvaha, Mahaha, Janaha, Tapaha, Ogum Satyam, 7. Like that, you have 7 lower lokas. And of course, if you are constantly in the tamasic level, then you will go there. Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Rasatala, Thalatala, Mahatala, Patala. 7. 7 lower lokas, 7 higher lokas. Karma. Remember, I spoke about this when I talked on Karma Yoga. Your karma that you do in this life will decide. Higher lokas, lower lokas. Right? And finally, what's the fruits? The phalam, the phal. Karma phal. Your fruits of your actions, consequences of this life. If you are constantly engaging in the sattvic energy, then you get punyam and jnanam. Punyam is, of course, good consequences. Jnanam is knowledge. And you can use that knowledge to transcend. Right? Rajasic means you get dukkham and lobham, sorrow and greed. So what about tamasic? Tamasic means at the end of the day, right, consequence of this life, you get ajnanam, which is ignorance, and moha, which is delusion. How fantastic is that? God telling man what you should do to attain me. So there should be no confusion at all. Totally no confusion at all. That's why the acronym I've given for this chapter is TRAP. Because life is a trap. T-R-A-P, trap. Right? Trap. Just like, if your house has got some, vermins, you set a trap. Why you want to catch the fly? And that guy, when he gets trapped, he knows that's the end of his life. Likewise, this is our life, right? We are given a birth, right? Until the day we die, we've got a chance to make a difference. Otherwise, at the end of the day, we are also caught in the trap. And what's the consequence of the trap? Punarjanmaha, punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janni, jatare shayanam. Remember that. So what is T? 3 modes, 3 gunas. Rajasic, Sattvic, Tamasic. Okay. What is R? The race for prominence. In this life, we are always racing for something, isn't it? Wanting. Get this, get another thing, get another thing, get another thing, get another thing, get yet another thing. Racing for predominance and prominence. What is A? Actions in the 3 modes. This is what I just told you, And P is how to get a pure life. Gunatitaha. Use the sadhana, which is bhakti. Okay. So 3 modes of material nature. Now, every person who is born, you are born with all your senses, right? The 3 qualities permeate everything. Everything you see, everything you hear, everything you taste, everything you touch, everything you smell. Your lifestyle, your attitude, your behavior, everything comes under these 3 modes. And that is what I just told you. Your lakshana, right? Your bandhana, your jnana, your gati, and your fruits, punya, phalam. Whether you are sattvic, you get what? Rajasic, you get what? Tamasic, you get what? Very clearly it said. Therefore, T, unless you transcend these 3 modes, you are not going to go to the stage of gunatita. You can by using bhakti, right? Sattvam rajasthama itihi guna prakriti sambhavaha nibadat nanti mahabaho dehe dehinam avyayam. O mighty armed Arjuna, says Krishna. The material energy consists of the 3 gunas, the 3 modes called sattvic energy, rajasic energy, and tamasic energy. Sattvic is goodness, rajasic is passion, tamasic is ignorance. These 3 modes will bind the soul eternally to the perishable body. So train this perishable body not to be tacked to those 3 gunas, but to be above those 3 gunas, so that when the body perishes, the soul continues the journey. Otherwise, the soul will have to go back into another body, which will yet again perish. How many chances do you need? Goodness, if goodness or sattvic energy predominates, one will aspire for long-term happiness, even if one experiences short-term sadness. Okay? If the person is overtaken by passion or rajasic, then he frantically is seeking immediate short-term gains, short-term happiness. Not worried about long-term. On the other hand, if a person is dominated by ignorance or tamasic energy, then they rarely achieve energy at all because they are vibrating at the lower levels of delusion and maha and moha. Right? So, where do you want to go? How do you want to make this journey? Race for predominance. Sometimes you say, well, this person, they're always moody, they're not very approachable, In fact, you think twice before you want to go and talk to them. Why do you say that? Because a person is controlled by these three modes, sometimes rajasic, sometimes sattvic, sometimes tamasic. Rajas tamascha vibhuva sattvam bhavati bharatha rajasthavam tamaschaiva tamasattvam rajastatha. What does that mean? Sometimes goodness will prevail, sometimes rajasic will prevail, sometimes tamasic or ignorance will prevail. So, where you are able to control, you should actually control, Arjuna. Don't let tamasic control, don't let rajasic control, and don't let the sense of balance give you the arrogance that you are always sattvic. You must be above, rise above that, right? These three modes compete with each other. That's why they say they race for predominance and preeminence, prominence. Rajasic will say, I am the boss. I want to be the boss. Tamasic will say, okay, whatever happens, okay, I'll carry on. And the Sattvic will say, no, I am the boss. The fact that Sattvic says, I am the boss, the I am, goes back to chapter 13. This says, take the I-ness and the minus out. That's why he's saying, Gunatita means you are above the three gunas. So all those of you out there who have been saying you're Sattvic, well, that's not good enough. Krishna says, rise above that. Because that's still telling you that you are claiming to be something when you shouldn't claim to be anything. Okay. You see, Krishna was born as God, right? In fact, at any point in time, did he tell anyone who he was? Did he show off? No, only to those who needed to see, right? He showed. And that also because of circumstantial necessity. Not because he wanted to, on a Thursday morning, he gets up and says, okay, today I shall show three people that I am actually God. No. So, right? Sattvic is a sense of balance, but you must overcome that sense of balance, rise above that so that you become the Gunatita. And what that means, you know what? That means you must become Buddha. Whatever happens, you are totally not affected by it. Good? Okay. Bad? Okay. Positive? Okay. Negative? Okay. Knowledge? Okay. No knowledge? Okay. Completely indifferent to everything and anything that happens to you. Then you are slowly becoming, Goodness will clarify. Passion will confuse. Ignorance will obscure. Simple thing I give you. Goodness will clarify. Passion will confuse. Tamas, ignorance, will obscure. So you choose which one you want to do. Actions in the modes, that is A, T, R, A, T, three modes, are race for eminence, dominance, prominence. A, actions, What actions? Well, Sattvic will have some sort of action. Rajasic will have some sort of action. Tamasic will have some sort of action. Sattvam sanjayate jnanam rajaso lobha evacha parvada mohau tamaso bhavatho jnanam evacha. From the mode of goodness arises knowledge. From the mode of passion arises greed. From the mode of ignorance arises negligence and delusion. There you go. This is the Lord, right? This is chapter 14, verse 17. Chapter 14, verse 17 is exactly telling you from the mode of goodness, from Sattvic comes knowledge. You must use the knowledge to transcend that Sattvic quality. From the mode of Rajasic or passion arises greed and desires. And from the mode of ignorance or Tamasic arises negligence and delusion. If you don't get out of it, reincarnation is definite. Right? So he says, work on your goodness so that you become great. Once you have achieved that greatness, then work on your greatness to become grand. Only when you are grand and vibrating at that grand level of bhakti, then you and I merge as one. For that, you need pure life. That's the P. P-R-A-P, pure life. Pure life means what? Well, almost the last verse in this chapter. It says, Mam cha yovya bicharena bhakti yogena sevata sagunan samatityakan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Brahma bhuyaya kalpate means what? Those who serve me with unalloyed devotion, right? And they rise above the three modes of material nature, then they come to the level of Brahman. My God, how simple it is. So if I control and make sure that I don't get deluded, and make sure that I don't get consumed by this passion or rajas, and make sure that I rise above being balanced, then I'm there. Yes, I give you my word. Then to become completely free of karmic actions, completely free of karmic actions, one must transcend even the mode of goodness and become situated at the spiritual platform where there is no mode at all. So you can't say because I'm Sattvic, I deserve to be there. No, Sattvic is still a mode. It is a material mode. Just like passion or rajasic is a material mode, just like tamasic or ignorance is a material mode, still you are vibrating at a material level. So Krishna is saying, rise above that. So you are vibrating at a spiritual mode. Spiritual mode is devoid of sattvic, devoid of rajasic, devoid of tamasic. There you go. What mode you want, right? And once you are at that level, that is the character of perfect transcendentalists who enjoy the nectar even in this life, the nectar of immortality. And that brings an end to chapter 14. The first two of the last 6. So we've got 2 more weeks. Next week is chapters 15 and 16. And then the week after that is the last 2 chapters, 17 and 18. And you need to think what a journey you have made in this last 7 to 8 weeks. And unless, and I say this with a conviction that is higher than the tallest mountain on earth, unless there is some change that is happening within you as a result of making this journey with me in the last 7 to 8 weeks, and certainly in the next 2-3 weeks, you've wasted your time. Something must change. Something must give. And as a result of that, you must get something. Then the journey, the time, the commitment, the effort is worth your while. Otherwise, you have wasted your time. Okay. Anyada sharanam nasti tvameva sharanam mamaha tasmat karunya bhavena raksha saishvaraha. Harihi om tatsat sri saishvara arpanamastu.